Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Obsessive Compulsive Gaming. I am the Obsessive Compulsive Gamer, and this is my review for Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. So dear viewers, if you don't mind, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis originally released all the way back in 1999. And just like that beautiful bearded bastard Barry Burton, you're probably wondering,
what is this?
Resident Evil 3 is both a survival horror game and a direct sequel to Resident Evil 2, which in turn was a direct sequel to Resident Evil 1, which in turn was a direct sequel to Resident Evil 0. The story for this game sees us playing as Jill Valentine as she attempts to escape Raccoon City the only way she knows how, badly. While doing so, she joins up with a character called Carlos, and he attempts to romance Jill the only way he knows how, badly. Oh, and we're also constantly pursued by a character called Nemesis, who wants Jill badly. And while most of that plot synopsis was complete and utter bollocks, can the same be said about this game as a whole? Well, I guess we'll just have to review this Resident Evil sequel the only way I know how, badly.
Today's word of the day is badly. B-A-D,
That's alright, Bertram. No one knows how to spell that particular word. So let's begin this actual part of the review by talking about what I actually really enjoy about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. The first thing I must absolutely talk about is the fact that, unlike its predecessors, this particular Resident Evil entry actually features choices and multiple endings. At certain points in the game, mostly when that big buffoon Nemesis turns up, the game will present you with two options. Option 1 might be, give Nemesis a wedgie. Option 2 might be, run and hide in the bathroom and hold your nose because the smell, oh my. On another occasion, you might be presented with option 1, use Carlos as a human shield against Nemesis. Option 2 might be, use Carlos as a human dildo, human sword, and do battle with Nemesis. Please note, dear viewers, none of those choices I just laid out for you there actually feature in the game, sadly, but I'm sure you get the point. Also, based on certain decisions that you make at the end of the game, you'll get one of 3 possible endings. And if you're going to ask me which ending is canon, well, I've no bloody idea. I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about bloody Nemesis himself. After all, his bloody name's in the game's title. Though personally, I think if Capcom had used my suggested title, that being Resident Evil 3-Way, they might have sold a few more copies of this game. Anyway, Nemesis has quite a lot in common with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. That being, he just turns up bloody uninvited. Sometimes he'll attack you with a tentacle thing, sometimes he'll attack you with a bloody rocket launcher, other times he'll just bloody pick you up by the neck and attempt to tickle your feet because he knows you can't stand it when people do that. And every bloody single time he turns up, it's an absolute jolt to the nerves. Not least because you'll hear him screaming his bloody catchphrase while being underscored by some particularly sinister music. Is it an original idea to have a persistent stalker in the game? Well, no, not really, because after all, in Resident Evil 2 we did have Mr. X. But whereas Mr. X's appearances were completely scripted, Nemesis can turn up at any bloody time. Yes, even when you're sitting in the bloody toilet, reading your favorite gaming magazine. And in fact, that might be worse than just when he turns up trying to kill you. Complete and utter bastard. Another thing I really enjoy about this game is the pleasure of playing with playing as Jill Valentine once again in a Resident Evil mainline entry. And yes, before all the Resident Evil fanboys and fangirls correct me in the comments, I know this was never intended to be an actual mainline entry in the franchise. I know this was supposed to be a spin-off. I know that Code Veronica was probably supposed to be Resident Evil 3. But quite frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. As for the gameplay itself, it's still just as fun as it was in Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 1. Except this time you'll get to explore a little bit of Raccoon City itself, doing the usual puzzle solving, looking for keys for doors, fighting zombies. There'll be some conveniently placed explosive barrels into something that is still less burnt than my average attempt at making toast at midnight on a Tuesday. We get the return of some famous Resident Evil enemy types like the dreaded Hunter, of course the zombies, as well as some new enemies. And as per usual, the game does feature several boss fights, though granted, most of these are just against a different version of Nemesis. The game visually also looks rather like Resident Evil 2 did, with all those pre-rendered backgrounds. And that's not a bad thing. If you're into your retro-looking horror games, then Resident Evil 3 should be right up your right up your alley. Something as probably an improvement over Resident Evil 2, though, is this game's voice acting, which is definitely far less campy and cheesy than it was in Resident Evil 2 and the first Resident Evil. It's not bad, all things considered. Oh, and something I should have said in the visuals section. Yes, I do divide these reviews into sections. I do love those FMV cutscenes that you get every now and again. Some of them in this game are quite exciting, like an encounter with Nemesis aboard a train, lots of explosions, good stuff. So let's see, negatives. Well, I suppose the story is nothing to write home about. It's essentially just Jill wants to get the hell out of Raccoon City, and that's about it. Compared to Resident Evil 2's sprawling narrative, it's definitely somewhat lacking. Also, rather unlike Resident Evil 2, this game doesn't have the best cast of characters. It's basically just Jill, Carlos, Nikolai, Brad turns up very briefly, and Nemesis. And that's about it. But of course, if we're comparing this game to the masterpiece that Resident Evil 2 was, of course it's going to turn up a little bit short, especially considering that this game was always planned to just be a spin-off and not really a true sequel to Resident Evil 2 at all. But of course, without stating the obvious, if you consider yourself to be a Resident Evil fan, maybe you've only played the remake of Resident Evil 3, you've never played the original, well, I highly recommend that you do. You can play it on PS1, PS3, put the PS1 disc in your PS2. Of course, it's recently become available on PS4 and 5. It's on the GameCube, it's on the bloody Dreamcast, of course it's on PC. And if all of that fails, well, you can just emulate the damn thing, can't you? This isn't the best Resident Evil game. It isn't the worst Resident Evil game. But in my humble opinion, which as you all know, is the only opinion you should trust when it comes to critiquing video games, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is pretty damn good. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another review by yours truly. If you enjoyed this little review of mine, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed it, well then feel free to give me a thumbs down. But please remember the single most important thing I always tell you, dear viewer, and that is to always stay obsessed with gaming. Are you still here? Oh, you must have really enjoyed this video then. In that case, you had better subscribe to the channel and check out our other content. Otherwise, you're a booby pants, and no one wants to be a booby pants.